WDET is supported by the College of Business Administration at University of Detroit Mercy. UDM's Master of Business Administration is designed to accommodate the career needs of professionals across a variety of work organizations. More information at business.udmercy.edu.
It's the Metro on 101.9 WDET. I'm Tia Graham.
And I'm Nick Austin. Detroit City Football Club has a new head coach, and we'll check in on how the team is shaping up ahead of Saturday's season opener later in the show.
Nick, really quickly, have you ever been to a Detroit City Football Club game?
I have.
You have? How was it?
Loud.
Okay, all right, cool. You're a sports guy, so I thought, hey, you like sports no matter where it's coming from. Yeah, later on the show, we'll also find out how we got 5 gross points. WDET's Quinn Kleinfelter uncovers the answer. But first, on the Metro. The Eastside Community Network aims to create sustainable growth on Detroit's East Side. This year, the organization is celebrating 40 years of service, and they recently received a $1 million grant from Governor Gretchen Whitmer's office to bolster their conservation work. To discuss this, we have Donna Davidson here. She is the president and CEO of Eastside Community Network. Donna, welcome to the Metro.
Thank you.
Awesome. So you all are celebrating 40 years of community service. To commemorate the special year, you all received a $1 million grant from Governor Whitmer's grant program that builds on her Make It in Michigan strategy. So talk to us a little bit about 40 years, of course, and then that $1 million grant.
Well, 40 years of a nonprofit community-based organization that is grassroots and has never had a dedicated source of funding is something to celebrate. Our organization was founded by Maggie DeSantis. I've worked here 12 of the 40 years. In the 90s, I served as deputy director of programs, and then I was promoted to. Then I came back in 2016 as president and CEO, and we have continued to grow. And we're really excited to be in our community doing the work we do. The grant we received is actually a capital grant to support the continued build out of the Stoudamire Wellness Hub, which is our signature program. Now it's a 17,000 square foot building. We serve about 1,700 members, and membership is free of charge.
So when I think about it, I was doing a little research on the Stoudamire Wellness Hub. There are so many different things that you are offering to the community. Can you talk about some of the things that you all are offering there, resources?
Yeah, so we really function around the 9 dimensions of wellness. And those 9 dimensions are more than health care, more than physical health, but we also look at intellectual wellness. We look at social wellness, mental wellness, creativity, entrepreneurship, a number of different domains that are not adequately met in communities like ours, which have experienced so much disinvestment. We don't have dance studios in our community, but we offer all kinds of dance for beginners and people with a little bit more experience, everything from hustle to ballroom dance to Zumba to step. So we offer those things. We also offer some fitness classes. I should have mentioned step as a fitness class, deep stretch or yoga. We have weightlifting, spinning, and then we have art classes. We have art for people who need some therapy. So we have art therapy. We also have provide Throwback pottery classes. We have sewing classes, knitting classes. We have women's health classes. We have a weight loss initiative. And then we have partnerships with external entities that provide all kinds of services and resources, including Wayne Health, the Detroit Health Department, and a number of healthcare providers in our community. We have clubs that members themselves form based on their interests, and we support that. We've got the teen center, and then we have space for children that we're in the process of building out so that we can serve everybody from cradle to grave.
So when I think about the Eastside Community Network's reach and everything that you just talked about, I think about, does it often feel like you all are filling in? I know you're filling in the gaps that are missing in the community, but what type of gaps are you seeing that you're filling in that desperately need to be filled in the Eastside Community Network that you all are, or Eastside community that you all are working in?
Well, thank you for saying that. We really function in 5 areas: strengthening people, building power, cultivating wellness, restoring neighborhoods, and then stewarding our resources. And so within those 5 areas, what we try to do is say, what does the community need? And what our community is predominantly poor. We've had hospitals closed. We've had recreation centers closed, businesses closed, and a lot of the things that people rely on for quality of life. There are no real places for children to have birthday parties in our community, and so there's no real finite, number of things that are needed. I think that the reality is that people should have the. I think the pursuit of happiness and liberty and life and all of those things require people to have a menu of options, not something that's being forced on them. And so what we try to do is be responsive to what people are saying. That in a healthy community, people can come together on any number of activities and also access any number of resources. I should also mention that our center doubles as a climate resiliency space, so that in the event of a climate emergency or any other kind of emergency, we have a place to deliver goods and services and for people to shelter until the emergency ends. We are in the process of updating our space with resiliency practices, including solar and, energy efficiency appliances, stormwater management systems, things of that nature. We have a
Donna,
car share.
I'm going to jump in really quickly. No worries. I'm going to jump in really quickly because I want to continue to talk a little bit about community. And the one thing that you talked about with community, because there's so many different things that you all are doing and you almost have to do in that community in order to make sure that it is vibrant and thriving. What does it mean to be a community of choice? What does that phrase mean to you?
People enjoy living there. People are able to get their needs met there. People feel connected to each other. People celebrate together. And then when there's a problem, people come together and make a shared demand. Community is an extension of family, an extension of self. And when people feel good about those things, they're more likely to stay, invest, and continue to help improve things. We want that. We want young people to not only feel good growing up, but to want to stay, to go to college, come back, and reinvest in their skills. A lot of times when we talk about growing a community, all we're talking about is housing or commercial redevelopment, but it's really how well are the people? What is the inclusive social well-being within that space that makes people want to continue to invest and to stay?
Donna, I think about the East Side, and I often, especially those who are from the city of Detroit. We talk about East Side versus West Side and different things and such, and all the the fun little things that we talk about, but being serious and getting serious, creating a home on the East Side. I know once again people talk about East Side, West Side, different things and whatnot, and oftentimes they talk about the East Side in a negative light. So how can we begin to change that stereotype?
I'm going to be really honest with you. I think a lot of times the negative tropes about the East Side are rooted in anti-Blackness and the concept that the people on the East Side are less educated, less mannerable, less respectful than the people on the West Side. And that's provably false. I think it's silly. I think that we need to stop attacking each other in that way. Mm-hmm. I was born on the West, raised on the West Side, and I live on the East Side by choice. It's one city of Detroit. I have friends on the West Side, and I think let's stop competing and let's just understand that we're just in different parts of a city that matters. But Detroit was built on the East Side. The Black community, Black Bottom, Paradise Valley, every historical, cultural narrative that you have about Detroit and Black people begins on the East Side, and it doesn't end there. So, there's so many beautiful aspects to the East Side, but I will say that the best of all is the people. Our Maggie DeSantis is a great leader who founded the organization. Angela Brown Wilson, who's our chief operating officer, is a person who has not only served Mayor Archer, one of his top executives, but has also led many organizations. She remains in the community that she was born in. You have our former state rep, Alberta Tinsley Talabi, who is also a former Detroit City Council member and a business owner and the founder of Mac Alive, living in the place that she grew up. And people stay there and people continue to invest there because the people on the East Side really are amazing in many instances. And so we hear about negative things, which happen all through the city, but we don't always hear about the wonderful people who are there just making great things happen. So I hope that we get to the point where we have respect for all sides, and also that we stop categorizing people in ways that contribute to anti-Black narratives and tropes.
Donna Givens Davidson is the president and CEO of Eastside Community Network. Before I let you go, I just want you to just give us a little bit of a spiel one more time about Eastside Community Network. It's 40 years and what you all plan to do this year.
Oh, well, we're going to be celebrating all year. We have an annual meeting coming up. We have Juneteenth open house. We have a golf outing, the Eastside Extravaganza, the Eastside Summit. We always have a lot of activities going on. Just check our calendar at ecn-detroit.org, or you can sign up for our newsletter on our website to get more information so that you can stay in the loop. But we just are an organization. We're open 6 days a week. We welcome people. We love working with folks, and we can always use your support. So if people are interested in supporting us, either by donating items that can be used by the community, by donating time, by maybe even coming to work for us because we have a few open job positions, or donating cash, we receive it all. We are stronger together. That's our motto, and we rely on the strength and partnership of people who are listening and people who may not know about our organization.
Donna,
come visit us.
Donna, thank you so much. Donna Givens Davidson, one more time, is the president and CEO of Eastside Community Network. Thank you for joining us on the Metro, and good luck with 40 years of service there.
Thank you so much. All right.
It's the Metro on 1019 WDET, and coming up, we'll talk about why the way we return bottles and cans may change in the state.
Welcome back to the Metro on 1019 WDET FM. I am Tia Graham. Nick Austin is here. And Nick, I just heard that ad, but Happy's Pizza. And I'm thinking if you're getting the pizza on Pi Day, you might get a Coke or you might get some type of bottle to drink with. And I think about the bottle deposit program.
Well, sure. The bottle deposit program in Michigan right now, some say, is at a crossroads as we're facing falling return rates. We used to have a high of 90%, Tia, and was the model nationwide. But in recent years, we're getting down to about 75%. And the program that once served as a model of recycling efforts nationwide is now under scrutiny. What's the issue behind this? Some say a growing reluctance among retailers to accept returnables, and it's a problem that's been exacerbated by the pandemic, leading to widespread consumer frustration. Maybe this is why a new bill in Lansing is trying to make it easier for all of us to return bottles and cans. And to learn more about the bill, we're joined by Lauren Gibbons, state politics reporter for Bridge, Michigan. Lauren, welcome to the Metro.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you here. Michigan bottle deposit, something I always think about. You know, you're a broke kid, you have no money. Way you get it, cans, take them back. How did it not help out us growing up? But right now, like I said, it looks like it's a subject of debate recently. So can you tell us how it became the subject of debate and what's going on in Lansing?
Yeah, so essentially, if you go back to 2020, there was a temporary shutdown of all bottle deposit facilities. There was a lot of concern about handling these deposits. You know, people are drinking out of these cans, often turning them back without washing them. There were some sanitary concerns. So the program was paused for several months. So obviously in 2020, a lot of people expected return rates to be down because people were, you know, in some cases stacking their cans up or putting it in their garage and having like bags and bags
and
of
this,
them before they
just
could take
to jump
them back.
in real quick, Lauren, this makes sense in 2020, right? Because especially in the beginning days of the pandemic, people didn't know how transmutable everything was, if we were going to get a vaccine. So we were at high caution at that time. Right.
And so that's where a lot of these issues stemmed. So there were closures. It eventually did come back. There was a drop-off, though, because certainly there were a lot of cans that people just decided to dispose of some other way if they didn't want to take up storage space in their homes. The issue now is that the recycling rate has never popped back up. So it had been on a slow decline in recent years, but it had always been in the 90 percentile. At the high point was, I think, 98% in 2007. In 2019, before the pandemic happened, it was at about 89%. But it dropped down to 73% returns in 2020. And then now in 2022, the last data we have is about 75. So that's a lot of cans that are not being returned into Michigan's recycling system that used to be. So there's a lot of concern about that. And the bill that we're discussing and that was brought up in committee this week is concerned that retailers are a part of this. Essentially, the idea is to require retailers to have certain times when they keep the bottle returns open. And there's some of the representatives were talking about stores in their district where people would go and maybe it's not open on Sunday at all. Maybe there's only short hours during the typical 9 to 5 work day. The argument is that it's a little inconvenient for people to take bottles back now, so maybe people have stopped doing it.
Yeah. What kind of buy-in do we have in Lansing, and what would it take for the bill to pass?
So that's an interesting point because it's a voter-initiated law, meaning that any changes to the bottle bill, which was passed initially in the 1970s, would take 3/4 of the legislature. That means both Democrats and Republicans would have to be on board with it. Now, there's some support, but there are concerns as well, especially from retailers, because there's currently no set times that retailers are required to do this. Especially small retailers are concerned that these new requirements, if enacted, would require them to hire more staff or even potentially worry about their own sanitary concerns if they don't have the bottle machines.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is very interesting, and we're going to have to keep monitoring it, Lauren, because I know this is something a lot of us interact with. So we're going to have to keep you on board and keep a look at it as we have Lauren Gibbons, state politics and policy reporter for Bridge, Michigan. Thank you so much for joining us on the Metro.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
It's the Metro on 101.9 WDET. I'm Nick Austin.
And I'm Tia Graham. Taking a quick look at the forecast for you. Showers and possible thunderstorms are expected after 2. It's going to be mostly cloudy, a high around 55 degrees. Tomorrow, Friday, mostly cloudy with a high near 51 degrees. Wind gusts up to 18 miles per hour. And Saturday, mostly cloudy with a high around 56 degrees. Will be quite windy that day as well. And speaking of Saturday, Detroit City Football Club kicks off a fresh season this Saturday with a new local TV deal and a new men's head coach. Co-owner Alex Wright spoke with WDET's Pat Batchelor about the new coach, Danny Dicchio.
Danny is an experienced both playing at the highest level and then a very successful assistant coach who found a lot of success both in Toronto in the MLS and Sacramento here in our league in the USL. And we've brought him in. This is his first crack at the head coach gig. And it's our 4th coach ever. And we are anxiously anticipating what that concoction leads to this season.
Well, it is your 3rd season in the USL Championship Division. You've made the playoffs each year since joining. You were on the wrong end of a lot of 1-0 matches last year, it seems, which is a testament to your defense and your outstanding goalkeeper, Nate Steinwasser. But what about the offense? Are we going to see more goals this year?
Well, yeah. And Nate Steinwasser, a local product, right? Like, how great is it to have a team with guys that grew up in the area? But yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. Made the playoffs last year, but it was very much by the skin of our teeth, and a lot of that was often a lack of offensive firepower. The aforementioned Danny Dicchio, who we've just hired, he is a striker by trade. He is an extremely offensively minded tactician. And I think as we went through the interview process, one of the conversations that stood out to me was that his approach to the game is not only offensive and attacking minded, but he understands the value of goals, not only on the score sheet, but to the fan base, right? Like folks, especially of DCFC, love to celebrate. And there's no better way to celebrate than after a goal.
Yeah, you want to see more of the smoke at Keyworth this summer. You also just got a new TV deal. Where can supporters watch LaRouche?
Yeah, so this is one of the most exciting developments in recent memory for DCFC in terms of how our club can continue to strive to be as accessible as possible. It means so much to us to grow our fan base. We are the only professional sports organization around that not only has a men's side, but a women's side and a youth organization that allows this possibility for young kids to be wearing the same kit as their heroes on the pro side. But what we've lacked up until now is the opportunity for folks to watch our games home and away every single week, regularly, locally, and free of charge. So what we did recently was announcing a deal with CBS Detroit, which for those listening in the Detroit area, that's 62, but also TV Detroit 50. So they sort of have 2 channels, and our games will be on one of those 2 channels, primarily 50 every week. And we will also be working with them to create a structure where we are streaming those games statewide. For the first time ever, everyone in the state of Michigan will be able to log in or tune in to DCFC soccer on a weekly basis.
Through what app?
Oh, okay. So this is my job, right? To figure out how the best way to communicate this in this complicated technology world that we're in. The easiest way to watch it will be on your linear television. Then you go to the CVS Detroit website and they'll have the game streaming. That'll be the easiest way. We also have national deals above that. We're on CBS Sports. We're on ESPN a couple times. So we're actually, depending on the way you look at it, probably one of the easiest teams to find once you figure out all the apps. And, these days, navigating apps is just a part of turning on your device these days.
You mentioned the women's program, which just finished an indoor season. How did that go?
So this is one of those DCFC things where we're still crazy enough to say yes to every idea. And we're so glad that we did. We have a number of women that play on our summer team, right? That's an outdoor season in the W League of the USL. And they pitched us. They'd been playing indoor around the area. These are extremely high level players, but they have never had the chance to wear the rouge and gold on the indoor pitch. So they pitched us the idea of sponsoring an indoor team. And we said, sure, why not? And we hosted those games at the Detroit City Fieldhouse, and it became, in the midst of a Lions playoff run and a Michigan college football run, my favorite sports story of the cold weather season. We packed the place. The women played incredible soccer. We had chants and singing, just like an outdoor game, but in the field house. And they did extremely well. They're still playing. That season goes on until April. So we'll have a couple competing games to communicate over the next couple months. But it was just another one of those Detroit stories where you give something a chance and it works out extremely well.
Now, the women's side does return to the full-sized pitch in May as part of the USLW League. What's the progression timeline for the women? Is there a plan to move up to a higher division at some point down the road?
Our goal is that we have a women's side that is on the same level as the men's side. By that, I mean professional. There are some headwinds for making that happen. One of those is that the professional season on the women's side is, in the league that we're in, is an international schedule, meaning those games would be needing to be being played in the winter. The other aspect of it is on the business side of things, right? You got to sell tickets if you're gonna grow a club. We're still struggling to figure out and unlock the way to get as many folks to our women's games as our men's games. We put equal resources and equal intentions in supporting those teams, but we understand, it took us 12 years to get to where we are now with the men. We're in year 3 and 4 with the women, and we're going to get there eventually. And our goal is definitely to be the professional women's soccer side for the state.
What new fan experiences do you offer this year?
Well, Keyworth Stadium is always known for being the most electrifying and exciting place to watch a game outside, especially a soccer game, perhaps in the whole country. And we're always trying to figure out ways to get even more excitement in the space, right? Keyworth Stadium is a nearly 100-year-old stadium at this point. So besides the charm of of its concrete and steel construction. We've added some premium offerings where we're getting into the these breakthrough ideas where we've got corporate suites and groups, sort of the sort of things that you would walk through a more modern facility and sort of take for granted. We're building those from scratch with a DCFC twist, and it's things like VIP sections that we're experimenting with constantly, that we're hoping will get even more people more excited about coming out.
That was WDET's Pat Batchelor speaking with Detroit City Football Club co-owner Alex Wright.
It's the Metro on 101.9 WDET, and coming up, we'll talk about why the state banned the sale of whippets when we return.
This is the Metro on 101.9 WDET FM, your daily source for news, arts, and culture that's moving our region. Welcome back to the show, Nick.
Yes, on Tuesday, Governor Gretchen Whitmer banned the sale of any device designed for recreationally inhaling nitrous oxide. Known as whippets, it's become a substance particularly popular amongst young people, discharging nitrous oxide from a canister that can produce a rush of euphoria. So why was it stopped and what was behind the campaign? To learn more and discuss why they've been popular and why they were banned, we have Brandy Watts with us. She is the Vice President of Programs and Compliance at the Southwest Detroit Business Association and has been leading the Whippets Wipeout campaign of Southwest Detroit. Brandy, welcome to the Metro.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, happy to have you here. I think the knowledge of whippets can vary among our listening audience. So for you, just to get us started here, what are the basics? What exactly is a whippet?
So a whippet is a canister that contains a very dangerous gas when used for the wrong intents and purposes. The canisters are charged with nitrous oxide gas. Those gases are very much have a usage, if you will. The canisters are used in stores in restaurants and cafes and coffee shops and whatnot for the purposes of excreting whipped cream onto your drinks that you love to enjoy. Yeah. They are also seen in dentist offices. So you may have experienced, had a situation with nitrous oxide if you were having a procedure at a dentist office. Very regulated uses of nitrous oxide. However, we have seen a horrible epidemic of recreational use where an individual would take a whippet canister, and they come in various sizes from what I can hold in the palm of my hand, so what I would have to probably mount on this table to be able to access. Yeah. Those canisters the paraphernalia is then used to crack open that canister, and then the individual will be able to inhale that nitrous oxide gas. Sure. And it creates the euphoric high. Right.
So why was this becoming such a problem that you said, I got to get involved in this?
Yeah. So after just nearing the end of the pandemic, as businesses and the community started to, I guess you can say, come out more, when we returned to Southwest Detroit, as the businesses returned to their offices, there was a very visual littering of canisters across the community. You would find it in local parks. You would find it along the sewer line on streets, where you're almost rolling over them and then creating, hazards for the road, for road conditions, and just hazards for anyone.
Hazards for the road conditions. How so? Like, that's kind of a very visceral idea in my mind. Aren't these little canisters? How are they called?
Well, some of them are small. Okay. Some of them are small, and some of them are quite larger. Mm. I can imagine that hitting one of those at any rate of speed would not be a good idea for the larger canisters and could potentially cause damage. Sure. But also to the sewer systems, right? Those, as you said, some of them are really small, so I'm sure they're falling through the cracks, on the roads. But more importantly, just not knowing exactly what they are. Yeah. We found as we started this campaign that parents, that community members, that businesses were not even aware as to the usage of these canisters and what the detriment that they were causing on the community. Yeah. So aside from a littering standpoint, it was more of an education into what are these things, what are they used for, who's using them, and what is it doing to the community?
Well, let's talk about the damage that occurs then. Have you done some research on that, what effect it has on people?
Yeah, so I'm no doctor.
Right.
So we've definitely provided testimony in our Lansing hearings that we've attended. We've gone as the community advocates. Southwest Detroit Business Association has gone in as the community advocate arm, but we've also brought in the medical team to kind of talk to that specifically. But it does have damaging effects to a person's nervous system. It can paralyze individuals, not just for a temporary time, but over the course of time, over usage, this can have damaging effects. We've done and provided testimony from different family members who have had someone in their family affected by this horrible usage of these.
Sure. So what's the timing of the new law? I mean, has it gone in effect now? Have you seen any response as a result of it?
Yeah, I mean, this is a definitely response. We have been working on this for quite some time, since 2020. Initial efforts around cleanup and education started. And then there were local city ordinances that were put into place just to ban the sale for minors, for individuals under 18. Now with this passing of the bills, the enforcement comes next, right? There's a timeline now for businesses to take action. And if they don't by that timeline, then hopefully that's when we'll start to see the enforcement. If we take these off the shelves, there's no reason to have these on the shelves of local gas stations and grocery stores. The restaurants, the dentist offices, and those that need them, they can order them, right? They have channels to get them. It should not be available in the community.
Well, one thing I want to touch on before we let you go, though, is you also talk about littering, right? And so is this something else that you guys are looking at? Any other initiatives on? Because obviously whippets aren't the only thing that would cause a littering problem. So How do you tackle that issue?
We first have to tackle it safely and smartly, to me that's part of the next level conversation. We can collect all day, but if we don't have a responsible transportation and recycling plan in place for these, because it's a danger to deplete those canisters with the gases. It has to be done with the appropriate tools.
We just saw an issue over in Chesterfield.
We've seen the dangers of storing these containers, and so that's. For us as the coalition, we have concerns about collecting and having these items. So we want to make sure that we have a solid transportation and recycling plan in place so that we can get these canisters out of our community before we even organize any more collection efforts. We don't want to store them. Yeah,
don't want a Clinton Township again happening. That was a very dangerous situation. So I understand the push. And Brandy Watts, Vice President of Programs and Compliance at the Southwest Detroit Business Association and leader of the Whip It Wipeout campaign of Southwest Detroit. Thanks for joining us on The Metro.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's the Metro on 101.9 WDET, where I'm Nick Austin, joined by Tia Graham. Before we get into our next guest, I want to let you know that the deadline for applications to become Detroit's new Poet Laureate and Composer Laureate is this Friday. The City of Detroit's Office of Arts, Culture, and Entrepreneurship is seeking people to nominate those who they believe would be a good fit for the role. The nominated individual would be tasked with creating new poetry and music programming. To nominate a candidate, go to the Detroit Office of Arts, Culture, and Entrepreneurship's webpage and send the necessary information to rosek@metrosolutions.us.
This is the Metro on 101.9 WDET FM, and we're about to talk about Detroit's interior design, or I guess you can say Detroit's design. Detroit is an old city, and that means there are a lot of discarded items on neighborhood blocks and alongside older buildings. But just because an object is not being used for much now doesn't mean it lacks purpose. Bo Shepard is one of the owners of Woodward Throwbacks, a home goods and interior design store. Their work is to take old things not currently in use and find ways to reuse them. And now they have a new book. Throwback Home Interiors explains their work, their preferences, and why they find certain older objects beautiful. To talk about making what's old new again, Bo is here with us right now. Bo Shepard, welcome to the Metro.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Awesome. So, how did Woodward Throwbacks get started?
Oh man, so we started Woodward Throwbacks in 2014, back when illegal dumping was a really big issue. So being fresh out of college, we were on a budget and we saw all this material discarded in our neighborhood and we're like, hey, you know what, this is actually pretty cool. The texture is amazing. And we just started building small pieces of furniture for our own home. One thing led to another. We built a little one-shop garage in our garage, and we started building a line, and we started selling at Eastern Market. Now we're here 10 years later.
Wow. So 10 years of that work. So, I think about, of course, people who are using different pieces that they find or different, just like you said, and they're putting it together themselves for their homes. Where do people get started with something like that?
I mean, I think there's such a big DIY movement. You can start when it comes to building by finding material on sites like Marketplace, antique stores, or even just in your community. I mean, right now there's so many buildings that are being discarded where you'll be surprised how many amazing things you can find on the street.
Oh my gosh. So there is a line in the book that goes, in Detroit, the more you look, the more you see. And what you see is often beautiful. I love that line. Explain what that means.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like people don't embrace texture. They're so programmed to see new furniture that's super clean and refined, but it's so uniformed. And so I want people to embrace the wear and tear, and also to get their hands a little dirty and be like, hey, you know what? I want to finish it and make it my own. So go get the tools and do it.
So, you're talking, of course, this going tools, getting dirty, getting down with whatever you need to do in order to make your space your space. One of the main goals of the shop is to salvage old materials and find a way to adaptively reuse them. How do you know when you found something that is reusable or you can reuse it?
I mean, I always say never judge a book by its cover. I mean, we've salvaged old trim that was water damaged and broken up in little pieces. But yeah, with just a little bit of creativity and a little bit of knowledge, just sanding away some of the dirt and the grime, the piece and the material will reveal itself to you. So yeah, that's our philosophy.
You sound like an artist with a mold of clay. You're just shaping whatever comes out of that. You just,
Always.
So in your book, you both note that you're not preserving old material, that it's too late. Some of the old material, you just can't preserve it. It's time to refresh it. So oftentimes I think about really good samples from music and how they're pulling from old samples and bringing it in to make a new song. How do you learn from the past of an old object or material in a way that informs that current design that you're working on?
Well, I know for us, we build out collections. So we've had the honor of salvaging materials from the historical book tower, as well as the Michigan Central train station, or even just like local stores in the community, like Detroit Hardware, which is a woman-owned hardware store in New Center. And we were able to take that material and build out an entire custom kitchen, which is in the book, Throwback Home Interiors. You'll see it. I think it's one of like the first or second chapters. But yeah, sometimes like I said, the wear and the tear and where you find that material, you'll be able to learn a little bit of history from it.
Which is so cool. Can you talk a little bit about the work you did do or have done with Michigan Central?
Yeah, so I mean, we got materials from a demo. So we get our materials from contractors and demolition crews. And this particular individual was contracted to clean out the train station back in the 80s. So he had a whole bunch of materials stored in his warehouse. So that's how we acquired it. We just went to an estate sale and there was just a whole pile of trim and stone. And of course, I'm like, where did this come from? And he said, the train station. And I was just like, yeah, I need this. And so, yeah, we built out an entire collection. We have credenzas, coffee tables, and really cool bookends made from the limestone.
Which they can take the book. They can put the book
Yeah,
there.
and it's all on our website too, throwbackshome.com.
So one of my last questions to you is, what's the process like for designing your own personal space? When we think about, especially when we're using the book, what is the process alongside with the book, Throwbacks Home Interiors? How would you do that?
I would say the process is to remember that there are no rules when it comes to making your space. We are firm believers that you should be filling your house with the things that you love. Like I said, found objects, antiques, vintage. And just because you have, for example, a Victorian home doesn't mean you have to fill it with Victorian things. It's really about the feeling and the experience you get when you walk into your space. So like I said, our book is an inspirational guide. It's not a how-to, because we want people to find their own path and to have a Throwbacks home.
I saw so many inspirations there. I definitely need to use it as a guide. So thank you so much. Bo Shepard is a co-owner of Woodward Throwbacks and the co-author of Throwbacks Home Interiors. Bo, thanks for joining us on The Metro.
Thanks for having me.
The book launch party of Throwbacks Home Interiors is on March 16th from 1 to 5 p.m. at 11500 Joseph Campo in Hamtramck.
It's the Metro on 1019 WDET, and coming up, we'll hear an rendition of our own Curiosity series to find out why there are so many gross points.
Welcome back to the Metro, right here on 1019 WDET FM. I am Tia Graham, as always, every day, right here with Nick Austin. And Nick, I always think about gross point oftentimes, and I think about why there are so many.
Yeah, the gross points are steeped in the history of the region, intersecting with both the automotive industry and rum running during Prohibition. In this episode of Curiosity, we'll hear WDET's Quinn Kleinfelter, who investigated the gross points and why we have 5 of them.
The trail to the truth begins back in Grosse Pointe Farms at a small, well-appointed home that was once set on what's called a ribbon farm, a long, narrow slice of farmland typically set beside a body of water.
There are a couple things in this house that's extraordinary. We believe it to be the oldest ribbon farmhouse in Grosse Pointe in Detroit, circa 1823.
Isabel Donnelly is the Director of Education for the Grosse Pointe Historical Society. She says ribbon farms used to cover the lake shoreline in an original Grosse Pointe area that stretched all the way towards Hamtramck.
It was a Grosse Pointe township, and Grosse Pointe is French for large point. So that was for canoemen. There's the point, and the French names. So that's where the ribbon farm families came out. Then the lumber industry starts in the late 1800s, and they start buying plots of land and building cottages. And that's what changed the landscape from ribbon farm to mansions.
Donnelly says the ribbon farms drew workers to what are now the Grosse Pointes, while the area's lush landscape became a lure for those with wealth. A lure that still remains today.
There was the very upper crust, but there's all levels. I am certainly not an upper crust person working in a nonprofit. There are a lot of levels here, but I think it was that early years that Detroit became such a boom city and that so many wealthy people were here and had these huge mansions. So there's always been a group of classes here in Grosse Pointe, but the loudest is the mansions. That's what makes all the noise.
That affluence brought with it a reputation for exclusivity, that the Grosse Pointes only wanted a certain kind of resident, ones who were wealthy and respectable. Even Hollywood began portraying the Grosse Pointes as synonymous with old money snobbery, in everything from feature films to the hit cartoon television series, The Simpsons.
Look at those stupid city slickers with their fur coats and pointy hats.
Homer, those are elk.
I still hate them. Go back to Grosse Pointe!
But the chair of the board of the Grosse Pointe Chamber of Commerce, Kathleen Mullins, says the stereotype of the area as being standoffish is overblown.
We know that there's this reputation from long ago that Grosse Pointe was an exclusive community. And I remember thinking, oh, those Grosse Pointers. But what I see today is a community that is so phenomenally welcoming to individuals. If you want to be part of the Grosse Pointe community is really happy to have you here.
Mullins also serves as the president and CEO of the historic Ford Estates, including the stone-gated Grosse Pointe Shores compound that was once the home of Edsel and Eleanor Ford. It's an example of the wealth that Grosse Pointes are known for. But Mullins says the Ford family itself is also an example of how even the captains of the auto industry remembered their humble beginnings and worked to help those less fortunate.
They didn't have 2 pennies before that Model T was invented. That came off the line in 1908. Everything about them changed. And instead of saying it's me, and I'm taking my money and I'm going to buy myself a great big house, they didn't do that. During the Depression, Edsel and Eleanor paid the salary of the employees at the DIA to keep it open. They started Henry Ford Hospital. This was a hospital for the working class. It wasn't all about me. It was, we've been very successful and we have an obligation to support and to share that.
Mullins says Eleanor Ford requested that even after her death, the vast estate grounds would be used to benefit the public by hosting events like holiday celebrations and symphony concerts. Outside the mansion, estate researcher Maggie Litt says the carefully crafted landscaping that leads to the edge of a lake is so breathtaking it recently earned the site a designation as a National Historic Landmark.
The lake, you don't see an end to the lake. You see the skyline. The lake changes color every day.
They chose to come out here because of the solitude.
But why did officials in the Grosse Pointes choose to split the area into 5 separate municipalities? The woman with the answer to the mystery is Grosse Pointe Historical Society researcher Pam Scanlon.
The rich people from Detroit would come to Grosse Pointe when the weather was nice, and they would come and have a good time. Of course, naturally, alcohol, adult beverages were part of the scenario. Then they had some trouble in 1880s on the subject of alcohol. Some people wanted it, some people didn't, because it was ruining their lovely homes, especially in the farms. So they decided to split.
Beyond creating dry and wet communities, Scanlon says the Pointes began to carve an identity separate from the then booming auto capital of the world.
Grosse Pointe Park was part of the township, and Fairview was on the other side of Alta Road. Well, the city of Detroit was annexing all sorts of property for the city. Fairview was annexed, and Grosse Pointe Park did not want to be part of it. So they became a village of Grosse Pointe Park.
Scanlon says after World War II, officials in the nearby village of Lockmore decided to grab a bit of the Pointe's growing cachet and transformed itself into Grosse Pointe Woods. She says a few years ago, voters in Grosse Pointe Shores changed it from a village to a city to create a new governing and tax structure officials said would be more cost-effective.
That was WDET's Quinn Kleinfelter with the story behind why there are so many Grosse Pointes.
Nick, when I think about Grosse Pointes and I think about what we just heard, oh, it's snooty, is it not snooty, da-da-da-da-da. The host of In the Groove, he knows how to make sure that he's going to come into a place and turn it into his own.
Does that mean I'm snooty or not?
Not snooty. I'm going to lean. I was trying to be as nice as possible without saying he's going to come in and kind of, low class and place up. But
Hey. I'm looking forward to the show today. I just had to process everything that you were saying to me. And I was thinking about the fact that in Grosse Pointe, there's no public water access.
Oh, really?
What's up with that?
That's very odd.
You can't just cruise and go to a park over there? I'm not going to tackle that on my show today, I'll tell you that. Yesterday was 313 Day. We had a blast. You can listen to that full playlist if you missed it, wdet.org/groove. Today, it's a little rainy, it's a little cloudy, but I've got a giant disco ball, and we're going to use that to try to brighten things up and get some real dancing going on in the city of Detroit. We're about to lock in and turn it up loud here on In the Groove, coming up on WDET. Thanks, Nick and Tia.
Thank you, Ryan. That's going to do it for the Metro for March 14th. You can listen to recent episodes online at WDET.org and make sure to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform.
The show is produced by Sam Corey, David Lyons, and Jack Philbrandt. Our technical director is Nate Bender. Our music's done by Sam Bobian. Our news director is Jerome Vaughn, and our program director is Adam Fox.
The Metro is a WDET production, a listener-supported service of Wayne State University. If you like what you hear and want to support the Metro, consider becoming a member at WDET.org/donate.
You know, Nick, before we go, I'm thinking about the music that Ryan's talking about on In the Groove. I'm ready to skate. It's about that time to get some skating going. This is WDET-FM, Detroit Public Radio, your connection to news, music, and conversation. See you all tomorrow on the Metro.
It's Michael Caine's 91st birthday.
Is it?
Give me your best Michael Caine.
I don't think I have it on the spot. I'm thinking about it.
WDET is supported by the College of Business Administration at University of Detroit Mercy. UDM is offering a new master's degree in ethical leadership focused on sustainable, ethical, and inclusive problem solving. More information at business.udmercy.edu.